So welcome everyone. This is the second GitLab Runner Open Office Hours. I'm Elliot Rushton, the engineering manager at GitLab for the Runner group and intern for the testing group. So far on our call, we have three of our backend engineers for the Runner, Steve, Georgi, Pedro. We have Darren Eastman, who just joined, our product manager, and Ray from our community team. Ray, anything you want to say about the hackathon that's going on?
No, I mean, we've gotten, I think 3 or 4 MRs come in for the hackathon, and I think Steve, you've seen one of those already, so appreciate those coming in. And yeah, I mean, just excited about having office hour coincide with the hackathon. I think this just brings an opportunity to make it more visible for more people. So
cool. Yeah, so we're super excited about this, and we really enjoyed the first one. Obviously, that didn't coincide with the hackathon, and so it was, maybe didn't have as much attention on it. The plan for today is pretty freeform. We're here to answer any questions about potential contributions that have already come in. If barring any questions, we'll do some live code review, or Steve will do a live code review of probably 1 or 2 MRs, depending on how much we can get through. Yeah, other than that, typically what we do is we do get quite a lot of contributions. The hackathon, I think, has a little bit of a surge in that, even on top of regular. And so we typically prioritize things based on a 3-tiered priority scheme. By default, we call things priority 3. Sorry, I'm getting a weird echo. I think, Pedro, can you mute?
Yeah.
Oh, I can hear you, actually. So by default, things come in and we give them priority 3. This is just kind of our default priority. The highest priority items are priority 1s. We limit ourselves basically to 3 of those at a time. Those are usually end up being quite large, and they kind of speak more to our strategic product direction, like things we would add ourselves anyway, but maybe thanks to the community contribution, we're able to get the code in a bit quicker. And then somewhere in the middle is the P2s, which is basically, yeah, important but lower impact to customers. Thanks, Steve. And so there's a bit of a subjectivity to, I think, the P2s, and it's just kind of on our instincts. Anything anyone wants to add into that? Otherwise, we can either jump into any questions for any of our community members that we have here on the call, or Steve, you can get started. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to either put them in the chat or just unmute and speak up.
yeah, I see a couple of community members on the call as well, like Brian, Pierre, and others. Like if there are specific questions regarding how the reviews are done, or if there are any specific MRs that you want Steve to kind of go through sort of live on the call, just let us know. Like Elliot said, just either put it on chat or just verbalize your comments.
Yeah, hello, this is Pierre. Yes, I have one. The follow-up from the previous office hour. So if there's anybody else, we can start with him or her. But if there is nobody,
yeah, I'd be more than happy to do that. I think it would be a continuation, unless any other one have any questions.
I think let's just go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I will start sharing my screen. So the one we're talking about is this one. Last time, we discussed why we might want to have Bash on Windows and the possible solutions we can make. And the ideal solution we discussed was to have the full Git version installed on our helper image. And the reason for that is the full Git version has Bash installed inside of it. So I saw that Pierre already built the image locally, and it seemed to be fine. But first thing I like to do is skim through quickly the changes and see like what it's doing and things like that. So I see, first thing that I see is that we seem to be removing LFS version. So let's start from the beginning. We're removing the Git version from the CI/YAML definition. Now, the reason we had this in the CI/YAML definition was because we want DCI to be the single source of truth. But I also see that it got moved to here. Let me see what this comment says.
So, yeah.
Okay, I think this makes sense to keep it on the Windows specific part. Okay. Now, one thing that I see, for example, I'm not a big fan of one merge request doing multiple things. And the reason for that is sometimes one, gets hard to review, and two, if something breaks, it gets weird and funky on how to revert things. So one thing I see, for example, here, we changed the Git version. Now, for now, I'm gonna leave a comment about it, but it wouldn't be the first time I leave a comment and end up deleting it at the end, because then I realize, oh, the version upgrade was actually needed. So
it's not needed.
Okay,
it's just you have to do the SHA-1, the SHA-256, and it was actually easier to just upgrade it. So I just upgraded it to latest and greatest, and call it a day, right?
Yeah, I understand that, but since we already have the SHA here, and
no,
upgrading,
it's not the same version.
Fair enough. But upgrading the version on a I like to have version upgrades on a separate merge request, and the reason for this is we might end up having a regression that we are not aware of, some tests or something like that.
I'll do that.
So it's nice to, for example, we can just revert or something like that. I also like adding suggestions when I can, so much more clear. Now, let's see which block are we. So we're in the build Windows Docker image. Now I see that we removed the LFS version. Let's see why that is.
Oh, because there was a comment that we'll just trust the version that comes with the, I think, on top.
Yes, Git for Windows comes with an LFS version. Okay.
So basically, the idea of this merge request is to, before you use the min-git version that is distributed with Git for Windows, you have the min-git, which is just a zip file where there is really the minimum set of things you need to do Git. And this version doesn't contain Git LFS, nor it contains Bash. So, this version is just downloading the setup.exe and then install it with the silent version, which is line 24, right?
Okay. And does this still install Git LFS then, or?
So yes, when you look at line 18, you see the components you select. You have components is GitLFS, nice. So it's optional, and you can you need to add it like this.
Okay, sweet. That's quite cool. But also, okay, let's see what version it installs, and we'll check it out. Okay, so yeah, the changes seem very self-explanatory. So what I would do is actually build the image locally. So I'll take the merge request ID and we'll check it out. Can everyone see my terminal? Fine.
Yep, that's fine.
This is actually a cool alias where you just check out the fork locally and you don't have to mess with multiple remotes and things like that. It's somewhere in our documentation, actually. I forgot where it is, but it's a very, very nice Git alias. So now we have it locally, and I do have the Windows environment set up. Let me make the font bigger. Okay, so let's build it. And let's see what happens.
While that's checking out, I added the link to that alias in our docs in the chat on the call.
Awesome. So one thing that comes to mind, I know we document these variables in this file. So if we go to this file, here we document the LFS stuff here. So what would we need to do is in this merge request, since we're removing the LFS, if we decide to remove the LFS, we would have to remove this one as well to make our documentation up to date.
We'll do.
I'm gonna leave a comment here so we don't forget about it. Okay. So let's see on the build how it's going. So it's still pulling the setup. So while that's doing, let's see what the file is doing. So here what is proxy? And what is this proxy doing?
So sorry, I pushed my proxy configuration because I am building it from my. So I need to remove that.
Okay.
It's yeah, it's my mistake.
No need to be sorry.
Thank you for saying it. I actually removed it from the first version. I just sent a new version like 10 minutes ago, and I forgot to remove that one. So should I do a new commit, or you want me to squash the change? I'm just fixing up my commit right now.
I prefer. It would be nice to stick to one commit, so we can just amend and force push. Because at the end of the day, you're the only person working on this branch, so
Right.
force pushing is completely fine. And having one commit, unless like makes sense to have a second commit, for example, changing some other file somewhere. Having a good Git history is quite nice. Every time I merge an MR, I always take a look at the commits because I find Git commits very, very useful. And if it's just a bunch of fixed comments from review and things like that, I always end up squashing the merge request because those aren't really helpful.
I agree. So you can refresh it. I removed those 3 mistakes.
Awesome. And they're not mistakes, really. They're just small things. So one other thing I see, I love that you passing the, never mind, one sec, give me a sec. I need to check something. So let me pull it locally as well. One thing I haven't figured out with this Git alias is when I go to, can I pull it like this? I'm not sure. I always get some rejected error from Git. Ah, no, it worked. Or it did not
No,
work.
it didn't, because I force pushed. Probably the pool didn't work.
Yeah, I always end up having to delete the branch and repull it when I use this alias thing. I'm not sure if I'm just doing it wrong or. Awesome. So we're pulling the git setup.exe here. We're checking that the setup.exe has the correct checksum. And then we're starting the process, waiting for it, specifying the path, and then the arguments. So very silent, super. No restart, no cancel, log components, get LFS. So do I have these commands documented somewhere? Just to see like what commands are available for Git setup.
So actually, this is the thing that I took that from the Chocolate package.
Okay.
You know Chocolate?
Yep. Yeah.
So basically, figuring out the silent argument for an installer is always something very tricky, as they are barely documented. So I just took the Chocolati package, and there is a list of silent arguments inside the package. You search for git install. Yeah, this is a meta package. There is a git.install package that you can find a little bit later. Yes, this one, and then you click there. And then there is a list of files. If you scroll a little bit, files. All right, and then you can click on, yeah, there is a helper. So in the helper, there is the how you select the different options. So this is the component part, just link 43. Link 43, line 43, sorry. Yeah. So this is the components part, and you see that it adds the GitLFS part if you select GitLFS. And then there is a bunch of other components, but they are more related to the UI, the shell extension, and the thing like this. So I just took them. And then there is Chocolati install.ps1, which is a third file. And you have the silent args that are documented here, if I can say documented.
Yeah, okay, cool. That is something I never done before. Like I never actually looked at Chocolati stuff, how that's done. So that's really smart. Thank you for that. I wonder, Petra or Georgie, do you think we should add some comment here to specify where these commands came from? Or do you think they're highly contextual and will get outdated very fast?
I think like comments, just a quick link is gonna help. Especially the next person is also gonna wonder like what's this argument, where it's coming from.
Yeah, makes sense.
One thing we could do is also put a link to the YouTube video of this call in that comment, which might give a lot of context. Although you have to wait for the YouTube upload.
Yeah, so
I agree. I will link to the Chocolati package. It really makes sense. I'll try to find a GitHub version.
it's hash for, yeah, it's hash for so. So we get using the same flex as Chocolati does. And that's just linked to.
I had just pushed a new version with a comment.
Okay.
I just linked to the GitHub original files instead of the web UI.
Perfect. So let me refresh it and see how the comment is. So let's delete this one since we don't need it anymore. Let's delete this one as well since you pushed. Yeah, okay, awesome.
I think this will probably not, I mean, this is a GitHub package. This won't change URL. I think this will last for long.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think it would be better, just in case, because we at the end of the day we don't have control over this. If you pass in the hash, so if you go on GitHub and type Y on your keyboard, it will give you the full hash, and it's better to use the hash. So in the future, like probably we'll come to this in a year or two, and I'm pretty sure this will be changed. So
Right.
yeah, and even I would also link to the line number, because that's super helpful. And so imagine if this file is 100 lines long, it would be super helpful. So click on the line number and it will give you this one as well.
Right.
Okay, and then from the builder, okay, we're getting the Git files and we're setting the parameter for Git. This is the bash thing, I imagine, and the GitLab runner helper.
So actually, the bash is in gitbin, and what is in Ming W64 is the git LFS.
Okay.
So this is a small.
Oh, this is still pulling. No, could not be. Oh, okay, because of the thing. Okay, now I get it.
Yeah.
Now I understand why it was taking so long. So let's clear it and build again. While we're doing this, does anyone else on the call has any questions or anything to add to this, or even unrelated to this? Cool.
So what I ask the question in the MR is that not really sure what is your strategy to test that, because so here you are building the stuff. I didn't see building it from the CI. I see you're building it only from the release scripts.
We do build it on the CI, but I don't think we build it for forks. So for example,
Okay.
let's go on one merge request I have, right? And the reason we don't have it for forks is before Windows machines were only a internal thing. So it was just 2 machines that the runner team managed. But since we released Windows shared runners, now we run all the Windows tests on those Windows shared runners, but we have not exposed that for the forks yet. That's just purely, we have had not time to do it. But if we look, for example, a simple request, right? We actually do have integration tests here in the release stage where we build the images. So we actually make sure to run it. So in this case, what I would do, like for example, I don't have access to a Windows 18.03 image apart from the one we have in CI. So what I would do in this case, I would push this merge request, this branch, into our origin repo, which is the main repo, and actually then wait for the pipeline to run and actually test it. And probably I'll leave a link in the merge request to this pipeline. But this gets a bit tricky now since we enabled pipelines for merge requests, because now pipelines will not run on branches, but will only run on merge requests. I'm not too sure how to solve it apart from opening up a whip merge request and then closing it as after the pipeline is done. That's one feature I'm not too keen about, pipelines for merge requests, but that's something we can improve as well. So this failed. Let's see, checksum invalid. Okay, got it, because I'm probably using checksum here. So let's use your checksum from this one. I'm just checking if it's, I'm just thinking if it's worth to move to here or not. I do understand that it's only used for Windows, but it also would be nice to have one single place for all the variables as well. So I'm just thinking what are the drawbacks and benefits of each one of them. So let's see this one. Okay. Georgie and Pedro, do you have any preference about these variables? Like, I do like them having them under the variables declaration, because then we just have one place for all the versions that we install everywhere. It doesn't matter if it's Windows, Linux, or anything else. But I also get like this variable does not need to be available for tests and things like that. So I'm not too sure about it. And like having this comment also might be like confusing. Why not just have everything here and having the variables the single source of truth of versions? Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I think I would also prefer to have them on one place
Yeah.
where that's possible. Like if we can have any variable on the top, let's have it there. And if for some reason we can't, then only let's not have it there. I think that's how I see it.
No, I tend to agree with that.
And sorry, I missed what you said about the comment. Would you keep the comment in the?
No, I would remove it because this comment seems like not a smell to me, but like the reason we have to put a comment here is to be clear why we have it here, right? So like if we have to have a comment why we have it here, it seems like it's not really clear why we do have it here. So having it in the global is just simple and it's super clear to me anyways.
But there is one aspect that is not clear if you remove the, which is the fact that helpers for Linux are using the distro's Git. So changing this version won't affect anything in the Linux build.
No, it will not affect anything. What I'm saying is where we have our single source of truth for versions and things like that.
Sure.
Then we should call it Windows Git version then, if you want to do it there.
No, I would much rather stick to Git version, because in the future I would like to have a specific version, one version to specify for Linux as well, because that's one deficiency we have on our Alpine images, right? Like we do not specify the Git version. Whatever Alpine provides, we have to use, which is good and bad. So I would move this back to the place where it was and have the variables as a single source of truth for now. I appreciate the refactor. I think it was a good refactor, but I would move it back. If you have any other strong disagreements.
I'm just not sure if it's not better to have something that says that currently this has no effect on the Linux.
No, I feel that would get outdated very easily, and we would forget to remove that comment when we actually implement it. I feel like comments like those feel like they get outdated. We do have some comments of those in the runner code base where we should do this, but either we actually did it and forgot to remove the comment, or two, we actually never did it. So yeah, that's just my opinion. If you have any other opinions, feel free to say so. So let's see if the image was built or not. Okay, nice. So if I run Docker images, I see this one that was built a minute ago. So let me run it.
Question about moving this back is that the checksum is Windows specific, so shall I?
Yeah, the checksum is fine to have it where it was, because that is Windows specific. Like, we cannot do anything about it. But the versions, ideally, they are not Windows specific. So
yeah, because the checksum. There is a GitLFS checksum, which is probably only for x86, so I don't know what ARM builds are using.
I forgot that. But the checksums are specified per job, so I wouldn't worry too much about that.
Yeah, this is not the case. There are a Docker machine checksum, dump init checksum, and GitLFS checksum in the base variables.
That is a good point. Well, where do you know we don't have them here? The checksum for Docker machine, right? No, we just have the versions here. We don't have the checksums.
Oh, I wasn't looking at the right place. So I wasn't putting it in the right place. It's in another file. Which file is that? It's in common. Right.
So let's explore what we have in the GitLab to see what's installed. So we have git bash, git cmd. Okay, so this provides all the, I don't know what you call them, shims or polyfills for bash, I guess.
Yeah, I was tempted to remove what is actually not needed, but this is a little bit too hacky, I would say.
Yeah, and yeah, I feel it would be too much for little benefit. So we have pin cmd dev. Okay, I think this directory seems to be good. We still have the helper command. Yep. So this helper command is used to actually build and run the artifact and cache uploading.
So I actually have done some integration tests manual for artifact. I didn't try the cache, but the artifact for me was good enough to make sure that the helper Go executable was actually working from bash. Because here you are testing from command, so I was just make sure that it worked from a bash script. And I was actually just surprised that everything went very smooth. No issue, just worked.
Yeah, right now the helper image, the stuff for Docker Windows, either are manually tested or we have very flaky tests on them that we don't look at the moment. Unfortunately, I do have some merge requests that I need to get back to fix some of those tests, but I just haven't had the time. But so I think these changes do look good as soon as we push.
You can refresh. I pushed the new version,
Awesome.
Which puts back everything.
Awesome. So like seeing this, seeing this merge request, like the less changes there is, the better, the easier it is, right? So so it's just literally changing the 256 checksum, removing the LFS now. We're updating the 1803 and 1809.
And the thing is that those two Docker files are exactly the same. So we could use, you can normally use argument in order to change the tag of the image. So this is maybe something that we can do later.
I actually usually just run a diff on those two files here to actually check what's the difference.
Oh, I did the comment only on once. So
just changing this and this, which is completely fine. So with that assumption, we go, if 1809 works as expected, we assume 1803 works as expected. Unfortunately, since we don't have any tests. So we're linking to the correct file name now. We're installing the GitLab version. So one that comes to mind at the moment, and I would love Pedro's and Georgie's input on it, is now we're losing control of what GitLab version we install, which before we had. Now, like the biggest benefit of this is that the Windows people, like the Git for Windows people, know best what GitLab version works with what, right? So we offload that thinking to them. But then again, we do not have control over what version is installed. So it might end up into us having some regressions or something like that. So do you think that would be a problem? Do you think we should just stick what we have with this merge request, and maybe if it becomes a problem in the future, we actually fix it? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think so. Can test it, and if it ever becomes a problem, we can address it.
Yeah. So, and the reason for that is these are the questions like a maintainer, a runner maintainer ends up asking every time, like we change something like a version change or something like that, because we have to be careful at the end of the day that, things change, which we don't have control over. So we need to be careful of what we allow and what we don't allow to change right under our rug. So having GitLab no control over it might seem a good move for now, since that seems like much easier.
So we actually have a control because we know exactly which version of GitLFS is embedded into that executable file. It's documented.
Yeah, good point. Yeah. That's a good point. So
it's version 2.7.1.
yeah, and we can check this out as well. Okay. So I think that is fine. So let me, and we do have Bash installed as well here now. So we can check it out. So now the real benefit of having this is that you can run Bash on Windows, right? Have you tried it yet, or have you, like, do we need to do any more work on it?
Yeah. I have done basic tests on this design. I did much more serious tests on the previous design. So we already have some production that is actually running every day. So actually today I upgraded this infrastructure, so I didn't get any feedback from the people, but basically the idea with that is that we have the exact same build script for the Linux and for the Windows tests.
Okay.
We just use the exact same scripts, and also we use Makefile, so we can just do Makedev on Windows and on Linux. It's the same. Makefile use Bash as well, so it's really smoothen the experience to have to support Windows and Linux at the same time for me.
Okay.
Especially if you come from a Linux and Unix base where you are more familiar with Bash.
Okay. So one thing that Thomas actually brought up on our Slack channel today is the importance of the merge request title, since we use this for the changelog. So now this is very descriptive title, but at the end of the day, what this is doing is installing Bash on our Windows helper image, right? So to have it in the changelog property, because users are more interested, now we have Bash on Windows instead of we installed the full Git version. What does that mean for us? So what I would change that to is install Windows Bash on Windows helper images. And then here in the merge request description, we actually say, what does this MR do? I leave that up to you to upgrade the description, so it don't take too much time.
What do you want to? What will you want me to do?
Yeah, if we can update the description, like explaining clearly, like we're gonna install the full Git version to install the Bash.
All right.
So, because like the user see the changelog and we link to the merge request, so it's quite nice for them to get the full history of what is being made if someone is interested.
Mm-hmm. And I will remove the mention that we upgrade Git.
Yep, perfect. So, and then we can have a follow-up merge request to upgrade Git if we want to.
I wanted also maybe a follow-up merge request, or I don't know, updating the doc to, because you know, the release note is a thing, but actually updating the doc to make people aware that we are actually supporting Bash as well, it's important. So it was in my previous merge requests. I don't know if we want to have this modification doc in this merge request, or if I should do it in another one. Up to you to decide.
That is a very good point that I forgot to add. Yes, we do need to add documentation in this merge request. we do have it in our documentation guides that the documentation, at least the minimal part of the documentation, should be in the merge request that introduces the feature or change. So we should have it here. And then we will ping our technical writer to take a look at it and do all the magic that technical writers do.
Okay.
And when I review merge requests, I always try to leave all the manual QA things I have done. And it's quite useful, like for me to come back to this merge request and see, okay, what actual commands did I run? So I'll do that right now to make sure. And this is the boring part of reviewing copy pasting from your terminal of what you just did. I will actually collect this in after the call. What I want to do is, because this would take too much time, and it's not really fun to look at someone typing. I will start the JDK and actually run a few test scripts, like uploading cache and uploading artifacts.
Why don't you cover what the GDK is real quick, Steve?
Yeah, so GDK is short for GitLab Development Kit. It's a tool we have to set up GitLab and a GitLab instance locally on your computer. It will install everything like Rails, all the architecture that GitLab needs, like the web server, the database, and so on and so forth. Here are the getting started guides. So first you have to install some software on your computer. So like Ruby, Git, and so on and so forth. That's all documented here when you're prepared. And then setting it up. So at the end of the day, what's all you have to do when you're set up, you just run JDK start. It will start all the services here. I have the runner disabled because I prefer running the runner on a separate instance just because I develop on it, but that's different. And now when I go to my local host port 3000, and as soon as this finishes loading, I should get a local GitLab instance. So probably all of you, if you don't know, we have to have Windows, the runner run on Windows if we want to use the Windows Docker executor. So let me build GitLab runner binary for Windows. I just prefer building it locally on my Mac just because it's much quicker, because if I build it on my Windows VM, that VM is on shared disk NFS, and that gets quite slow. So I just built it quickly here. And we do have a make file doing make build, and then you pass in the build platforms. If you don't pass in the build platforms, it will just build for any platform we support. So this is quite nice. Just upload the override the variable to cross compile to anything you want, and that will bring it to out. out binaries, GitLab runner Windows. So we can see that the change, the date is right now. So if we go to my VM, now if I do, I should have the config set up. Let me check. So let me check my config.demo. And I do have a Windows Docker installed. That's pointing to the right IP. And since we are using the helper image, let's point to a specific helper image. So you can override which helper image to use. And since we want to make sure to use a specific one, let us override it. So Docker images. And we'll say that we only want to use this no matter what. So now, as soon as we will run a build, it will use that one. So let's run the runner. And we'll go here. It might take a while for me because I do have a lot of stuff running on my poor laptop. Does not handle it very well. So it's taken a while to load GitLab locally. A quicker way. Sorry?
I was gonna say, while we're waiting for it to load, we can maybe just make one last call out for any other questions. We just have a couple minutes left on this call. So if there's any other questions from any other people on the call about anything related or unrelated to the MR that Steve and Pierre have been looking at, please just either chime in on the chat or unmute and speak up.
Yeah, I think one other comment I wanted to make was, I mean, I think, Elliot, you've been opening issues prior to office hours. So we're trying to do this once a month. So if you have any topics or MRs that Steve or other engineers want to take a look at in future calls, feel free to add comments directly under the issue, or you can ping me on Gitter, and then happy to relay the message to Elliot and the team.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, while we're letting Steve finish up, I will create the next issue. The issue for the next office hours, even though we haven't settled on a date yet.
Yep.
So I do have a CIML file that will upload a PDF, if I'm not mistaken. So let me see if it's compatible with Windows or not. Yeah, it should run successfully. So let's do it. And the reason, like, you could use GitLab.com to actually run the job, and that might be quicker instead of using the local JDK. The reason I enjoy using the local JDK is things are all private, and I can share the tokens and whatnot, so I don't have to think about tokens or anything like that. Pierre, to double confirm, so if we merge this in, we do have support for Bash, right? On Windows for the Docker executor.
I didn't get your question.
if we merge this merge request and you can run bash on our Windows Docker executor, right?
Yes.
You don't. Awesome. Okay.
And
so
also, I was just I just added some documentation. I took the documentation I had already on the last merge request, and I see that in the limitation you say that there is a limitation nano server cannot be used. So this is a new benefit of this: is nano server can be used if you are installing bash inside this nano server.
yeah.
So
we do have plans to migrate to nano server, but first we need to support PowerShell 6. And
yeah,
then,
no, but if you are using bash, you can use nano server now.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, but yeah, fair enough. That's a good point.
I wasn't sure if I needed to edit this line that talks about nano server or not.
I would. That's an interesting point. Yeah. I need to think about it, because maybe what we can do is in limitations. Where do we mention nano server?
52.
Yeah. Here add a line unless you use bash and actually link to using bash. That might work. Yeah, we can add that and then we'll discuss it async with Marcel, our technical writer.
Right.
Okay, so. I feel like this should be TOML. Usually use TOML here.
So actually, the other TOML example are tagged ini. So that's why I took that. It's just copy paste. So
really?
Yeah.
I always use TOML, so there might. Sorry.
Oh yeah, it's not actually. Sorry. There is nothing actually on the other one. I will add TOML on both.
Okay.
Actually, TOML is not supported by VS Code, which I'm using, so that's probably why. I just figured it wasn't a thing in Markdown.
One suggestion I also add is adding a comment inside of this TOML, specifying that we're overriding the shell, just to make it more clear to the user who's reading the TOML that, hey, you need to update the shell to a specific value. I think we're over time, so we don't want to, do we want to continue, or what are your thoughts on it?
I don't see any real harm to continuing. I mean, obviously, people can drop off the call whenever they need to. Let's not take it too much longer. Like, I don't think another hour is going to be the most engaging content. But yeah, if you want to kind of like wrap up your train of thought and go for another 10 or 15 minutes, I don't think that's a problem at all. Unless.
So I would say the way we will wrap it up is action items after the just so I remember what we need to do. Like probably I'll review this tomorrow. So just a reminder of what I need to do. We need to check the documentation. Run manual QA, and that would be artifact uploads, cache uploads, Windows 1809 and 1803 image builds are successful. Can run bash on Windows now. Pedro Church, can you think of anything else? Git LFS, just in case. LFS version. I think we're using the same LFS version. Let me check quickly. Yes, we're using the same one. So we're defining 2.71 and we install 2.71, so we don't have to do that. So yeah, I think that's it. I'll go through the manual QA and leave an update tomorrow, and probably we'll end up merging it tomorrow as well. Well, not tomorrow. Actually, it's ping Marcel. And I always forgot his surname. I am so sorry.
It begins with an A. That's all I remember.
I think there's a bug in our autocomplete because it does not show anymore. For some
It doesn't. Yeah, it wasn't showing you either earlier, and I'm pretty sure you're still here. So I don't remember deleting your account. Let me find it for you.
So I found it. I found it.
Okay.
So I always like pinging him because he does provide really good feedback on the documentation, and he should look at all the documentation changes we have. So I think that's it. Let's see what is moving.
Steve, by the way,
Yes.
Can you add Marcel to the assignees? I remember he once mentioned he prefers it that way.
Okay.
Yeah, that seems like a case for a lot of people nowadays. Just mention isn't enough necessarily.
Yeah, at some point you get mentioned a lot, I guess.
Yeah, because your inbox gets flooded and it doesn't usually always get the attention.
So approve a rule and let me add myself as and that should show here. So for documentation, it's Marcel, and for backend, it's me. Awesome. Thank you, Georgie, for that, because I did not know he mentioned that. Awesome. So let me stop sharing my screen. And if there are any questions, we can answer or we wrap it up.
Going once, going twice.
Thanks for staying extra 20 minutes. And thanks, Pierre, for, again, being a guinea pig. And I know it's not always easy to have your thing like reviewed in public, like really appreciate it. So.
I prefer to have this quick review. It was very efficient, and I don't care about having it in public. It's really nice.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks, everybody. Have a good day.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Bye.